Hey everyone, welcome to today's High Score, our weekly call-in show at Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, and you can find me on Twitter at Dinfire, and no, it's not a Zelda reference. It's been a slow week in games, but lots of little stories, which is perfect for today's High Score because we try to be careful with this show. We don't want to discuss a lot of things we're going to discuss on Game Face. Game Face is coming up this Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, as usual. We will have our third TriCaster operator in 4 weeks. Since we lost Sam, it's been hard to find someone who can do it every week. So we kind of have a revolving group of people who have been doing it for us. It's a pain in the butt, but well worth it to have our studio. Miss Sam, definitely. But we're getting it all wrangled, and it looks like we have a big enough pool of TriCaster TDs that we can do the show every week without any problems. So pretty excited about that. We'll see you guys again here on twitch.tv/siftedgames on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. I think we have a good show for you guys today because there's a lot of interesting things happening that aren't necessarily big games, but they're great topics to discuss among people who are really passionate about games, and that is us. So with that, let's get on to the first topic of the show, and I don't think this will be a big surprise to anyone. And before we get to the first topic, I want to lay down some ground rules. When you come in, make sure you have headphones on. To contact us, get on Skype. You can use your PC, you can use a tablet, you can use your phone. We prefer if you came in via video, but if you don't and you just want to use audio, that's okay too. But like I said, make sure you have headphones on whenever you come into the show. Otherwise, we're going to get a wicked echo from you guys. So with that, let's get to the first topic. And I don't think anyone's going to be surprised that I want to talk about games being blamed for the mass shootings that happened in Dayton, Ohio, not Toledo, and El Paso, Texas. It seems to be when things like this happen, there are a couple ways to react. There are the people who think we need gun control, who say the guns need to be limited, there needs to be background checks, they shouldn't sell semi-automatic rifles. I don't want to get into all that. What I want to get into is the other side. And the other side is blaming it not just on video games, but on violent media in general. Video games tend to be the first thing that they kind of strike out against, but it doesn't take long before they move to games, or before they move to other media, but games seems to be the first thing that they kind of strike out at. And that happened again after the two shootings that happened last weekend. They're just a week away at this point from happening. And the GOP, very quickly, and again, I want to reiterate this before we start discussing, this isn't, at least recently, this has been a GOP thing, but if you go back in time, over a decade or so, Democrats were also blaming video games for violence. That seems to have stopped over the last 10 to 15 years from the Democrats, but the GOP has never stopped. And the GOP, once again, has tried to blame video games for the mass shootings. And there's all kinds of things that get tied up into this because there's so much money involved in politics. And basically, you have an administration that just gave corporations a huge tax cut. I mean, we're talking for really large companies like $1 billion or $2 for a lot of them. Basically enough for them to cover their payrolls for the next several years and also satisfy their stockholders. And again, I don't want to get into the political discussion about whether that's smart or not. I think everyone agrees that probably lobbyists and money should be out of politics. But unfortunately, on both sides, it's a problem because these companies have a lot of money and they contribute to campaigns on both sides of the aisle. And when they're giving you a lot of money, they expect something in return. No one just gives away money just because it's a good thing to do. Well, there are people. Philanthropists do that. There's a lot of people who give to charity. I give to charity. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. But we're talking about big gobs of money here. This isn't giving $10 to a GoFundMe. This is literally tax cuts that gave corporations gigantic relief in taxes. And when you do that, that's one way to pay back the lobbyists for the money that they've contributed to your campaign. But another way, and the most important way for most companies that lobby politicians, is to get favorable legislation that they want. Now, over the last couple days, Walmart started removing promotional materials for what it deemed were overly violent media. The first story that broke was all about games. They were saying that violent games, the signage for that stuff was being taken down in Walmart. Then just last night, it was discovered that a couple Walmarts around the country, apparently the memo that was sent out to Walmart to the stores wasn't clear on what Walmart's stance was. And so a couple of the Walmart stores just removed all the games from their shelves. All of them but what looked to be the most benign. So it was a mistake. Walmart went on the record and said, we did not tell them to do this. They misunderstood our marching orders and kind of went overboard with it. And apparently those stores are in the process of returning games to store shelves. But people, it's a distraction. It's a huge distraction, a huge deflection. Essentially what they're saying is, look, we know the vast majority of Americans don't think that violent media or violent video games cause violence in the real world, but there is a sect of people, and they tend to be the loud minority that will trumpet games and violent movies and violent television as the reason that we're having these shootings, instead of what most Americans believe is the real problem, which are lax gun laws and a lack of mental health support in our country. And look, we've beat the lax gun laws thing. We flogged that horse to death. The real problem, to me, is mental health. And well, not the real problem. I believe they're on equal footing with gun laws. I don't think there's any one answer that's going to solve the problem. You can't just regulate guns and that's going to solve the problem. You can't just put more money into mental health and that's going to solve. It needs to be a joint approach between the two. I've played games since 1977, I think it was. I think 77 was the year we got our first Pong machine and Skeet machine. So back in the 70s, there were these machines that they looked like a console, but they had like two knobs on them that you could twist, and you use those to play Pong. But then they also had like a little plastic gun that you could plug into the console, and then a white square would dance around the screen, and you tried to shoot it with the plastic gun. So I've been playing games since then. I cannot remember a single time in my entire life where I played a game and then it affected my behavior later. There's probably been a couple instances where I got frustrated playing a game where I had tried the same section of a game over and over and over and over again, and I got angry. And maybe I'd have to talk to my wife about that. Maybe that spilled out into my attitude a little bit later, but it wasn't the content of the games that affected me. It wasn't that they were violent or over-sexualized. It was that it was just frustratingly difficult to play or make headway in. And I think that's true of anything. Anything that you're trying to do, and if you're not nailing it the first handful of tries, you get frustrated. I think that's just human nature. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that I'm playing video games. It could have been me trying to learn how to whittle or trying to learn how to quilt or something like that. You can get that reaction from anything. So let's do the math, 23, 19, 33. In like 30 plus years of playing video games, I've never had a game affect me. But I don't have mental health issues. And do I think games could have an impact on people with mental health issues? Probably. I think that people with mental health issues are fragile and they can be affected by almost anything. But that's the thing. This needs to be a true two-pronged assault. It needs to be better gun laws and mental health. So I'm curious, have any of you guys ever been playing a game and feel like you've been affected by the content of the game, not that it was challenging, not when you played Dark Souls and threw your controller across the room, not when you lost in Call of Duty Online or when some kid online was talking trash in the headset, not that stuff. I'm talking about the content of a game. Have you ever played a game and had the content affect you afterwards in any way? It could be good. It could be that you beat a game that you've been playing for a long time and the ending was so moving that you're in a great mood the rest of the day. It could be anything like that. But share it. Let us know if you feel like if you've ever played a game and it impacted your behavior afterwards. Hit us at Sifted Games on Skype. As I said, we're good with video or audio. We prefer video. We'd like to see your beautiful faces, but we prefer video if we can. All right, here's somebody. Let's see what they have to say.
That's hurting my eyes.
Mr. McWomble, what's going on, my friend?
Hey Shane, how's it going?
Hey, how's your Saturday going?
Well, I was meant to be going away
Oh,
for the
really?
weekend, but yeah,
What happened?
I feel bloody awful.
Oh, you're sick.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in, though, man. I appreciate it, especially if you're feeling ill. See, people, this is what McWomble will do. He will call in when he's feeling sick, and he canceled his vacation. So what's your take on this stuff, man? What do you think?
Well, I literally finished watching Ready Player One, which is a surprisingly good film.
You know, I agree. I heard so much bad stuff about that movie. I ended up watching it on a flight, and I thought it was good. I wouldn't say great or amazing, but I thought it was good. To me, certainly it wasn't bad. But why has that spurred you to call into today's high score?
Well, in the last 10 seconds, I was like, what's affected you? And there was quite a funny story I think I've mentioned on something else before. I was playing Mass Effect 3, and there was the moment when, major spoiler alert for anyone who's not played this game, Morden Solus, you get the choice to cure the genophage or kill him and allow an entire population of people to continue to basically die off slowly.
Okay.
And after having invested God knows how many hours, like probably 500 hours in that trilogy by that point, my wife walked in on me at the point where Morden Solus was going to sacrifice himself to cure an entire species from...
Isn't it crazy, though? Have you ever noticed that your significant other always walks in while you're playing games at the absolute worst moment? They have an uncanny ability to come into the room at that moment where you're like, I really don't want them to see this.
And I was properly tearing up as well.
Oh. I'll bet you she got a few laughs out of that.
She was like, what's going on? And so I was explaining to her what was happening. And she was like, okay. It'll be okay. Just like carried on.
For instance, I was just playing Fire Emblem 3 Houses. And most of the art in that game is pretty benign. Like, they don't really go for the over-the-top anime girls with gigantic boobs and they're wearing, like, thongs and, like, these weird bikinis and stuff. They're pretty conservative in that game. But there's one character in the game that has a gigantic chest and she's scantily dressed. And
because, of course, there is.
Yeah. But how do I put this? My wife knows that I have a predilection towards certain parts of the female anatomy. Is that PC? And it just so happens that character in the game is endowed in the way that I generally appreciate. So she comes in and she's like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, she's a part of my party. And she goes, oh, I can see why you like her. I was like, okay, I guess so. But yeah, for whatever reason, like, she can be doing her own thing and I can be playing games in the living room for like 2 hours. And she will come in at that one moment where there's some cut scene where it's just crazy violent or crazy sexy or whatever. She'll kind of cock her eye and be like, "What's that?" She's gotten to the point now where she's kind of immune to it and she doesn't react like she used to. But there's still certainly those moments where she comes in and I'm just like, I'm a little embarrassed. I have to admit it sometimes. Games embarrass me a little bit in front of my wife.
And kind of on the converse, so moments in games where you're kind of meant to feel a moment of importance or stoicism or levity. And it was at the end of Uncharted 4, and I think the main thing for me was sort of just I've got a sense of I don't care anymore.
Wait, you just lost interest in Uncharted 4?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I had more enjoyment from playing The Lost Legacy than I did from Uncharted 4. And I think it was Nathan Drake just bored me.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that the plot in that game isn't as good as the first three. I would agree with that. I think a lot of what got me through that game was just how gorgeous it was. I haven't really played a game in a long time where when I play it, there's just all these little graphical touches that happen that I'm noticing continually. Games have kind of hit this bar where they're all kind of on equal footing visually. There's a few that come out here and there that kind of push things a little bit more than others, but for the most part, they're all kind of on equal footing. But Naughty Dog's games are still at a level where I notice the things that they do. I've mentioned it before, but the Jeep in Uncharted 4, like there's that gas can in it that's like banging all around while you're driving. In most games, that can would just be like glued to the body of the Jeep, but not in Naughty Dog's games. The way they did the flames in Uncharted 4, there's a whole bunch of stuff in that game that really kind of sets itself apart. And honestly, I'm a little nervous about The Last of Us Part 2 because they do put so much detail into the visuals of their games. I fear that it might be a fire rod for the type of people who are lashing out at video games right now.
I don't think they could, though, because the emotional investment that there is in The Last of Us Part 1, admittedly, I didn't care so much for it.
The game itself or the plot?
A bit of both.
Okay.
Because I came into the game very late.
Okay.
I've said this to a couple of people before, coming into it late and coming from a background of you can basically cure the plague that's causing humanity. You can save one life. That's a overly simplistic premise to jump from, and frankly, I'd bear on the side of utilitarianism in that sense, and one person's life against the cost of thousands. You do have to weigh those decisions up, and I'll mention it again. They do mention that in Mass Effect.
That's true.
I'll mention Mass Effect as many times as I possibly can.
You're not alone in that one.
Right, and what I think you're getting at from the premise, and like I did come in very late because literally I stopped watching Ready Player One and switched this straight on. I don't feel that games dehumanize anything. I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends at the moment. Do I feel that is dehumanizing the people who I'm shooting in that game? No, because it's a fucking video game.
I'm actually glad that you brought up Apex Legends because that's another component of this story today. I don't know if you saw or not, but EA decided to basically cancel an esports tournament that was supposed to air live on television because of the shootings.
ESPN canceled it.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? Do you think that was the right move? I mean, do you see HBO like changing its programming schedule for the day to not include any violent movies? Did you see TV changing their schedules not to include violent TV shows? How do you feel about that?
No, because they're not the lightning rod at the moment.
What do you mean they're not the lightning rod at the moment?
So if this was 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, would violent TV have been the thing? Probably, at least in the US. Not so much in other countries, but it's the cool thing to hate right now.
Do you think it's the cool thing to hate right now? Because I was talking earlier about how even, both Democrats and Republicans used to blame games for real violence. The Democrats have kind of stopped doing that. The Republicans have kept doing it all along. And obviously we've seen what happened in the last week with a lot of GOP senators, trying to use games as a scapegoat.
Yeah, and well, even I know what God's own party stands for, which is slightly telling, because it's just absolutely daft. There's no logical reason for someone to make that connection. And we spoke about this when I was breaking my own rule from the Birumvirate nearly a year ago, when I was saying, if you're talking about the propensity to create violence, the NFL and baseball and basketball has just as much propensity to create violence than a video game.
Oh, you're right, though. Think about it. Think about soccer matches, soccer hooligans, NFL game. Every NFL game I've ever been to, there were fights in the stands. And I mean fights where I thought people died, where some guy gets socked and then literally tumbles backwards down like 20 or 30 rows of seats and then like lands on concrete. Out tailgating before games. I've never been tailgating and not seen a fist fight. Ever. And the game hasn't even started yet. But
no one's going to talk about banning
though,
professional sports.
Now, I hear you, but does that also kind of point to the fact that entertainment can influence the behavior of people, though?
I just think people are stupid.
I would agree with that. And do you think that the GOP currently, and the Democrats used to do this too, do you think that the GOP currently is counting on people just accepting what they say without thinking about it or without investigating?
Right. Okay. How can I weigh in on this debate without sounding like some foreign git who doesn't understand the
culture in America?
Yeah, the deep-rooted culture of
guns
in America.
Yeah.
And how I'd view it is, how insensitive would it be for, say, I don't know, someone in Missouri to wander into a Walmart with an assault rifle and body armor just to test his rights in the Second Amendment?
Yeah, that's another thing that happened yesterday. Did that happen? Where
Yesterday.
A guy just walked into, I think it was a Walmart.
It was
body
Walmart.
armor with an assault rifle and said he was performing a social experiment. That guy, by the way, is lucky to be alive. I have a feeling, and I hate to say this, but I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me on this, but I have a feeling that if that person were a person of color, they'd probably be dead. I hate to say it, but let's be honest. When it's white people committing crimes like this, they never die unless they kill themselves. If it's a black or a brown person doing something like that, they'll die taking their hands off a steering wheel. So not only do I think that was a social experiment in, hey, our open carry laws observed in the Walmart, I think it was also a social experiment on how much can a crazy white guy get away with?
Yeah, well, there was it was interesting how it was reported in this country, which was how quickly would the police have responded if that had been, say, a brown-skinned person with a beard.
Right. Oh, yeah. What if it was someone who appeared to be Muslim?
Yeah, that's what they were getting at.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, we've seen it. That's why Colin Kaepernick is so pissed off, because there's different rules for people based upon their color, basically.
Well, he's been in the gym 5 days a week at 5 a.m. working out. He's ready to go.
He needs to admit his career is over. That's for sure. It's too late now. Nobody wants him to play for him at this point. There's been like 3 rookie classes come through. His career's over. He just needs to get over it at this point. And he got a settlement, so
Yeah.
he'll be okay.
On a slightly lighter note, I bet you're glad AB isn't in Pittsburgh anymore because he can't wear the same helmet.
It has been glorious to watch all this happen exactly how I said it was going to happen. All the people that were like, oh, he's right, it was Ben's fault. And no, it was AB. He's crazy. He is crazy. But anyway, I don't want to get into sports here on today's High Score. This is a gaming show. So have you ever had moments where you've played games and it affected you afterwards, other than the instance that you gave us with your wife where you were emotionally moved by a game and she kind of walked in?
Yes. I'm kind of struggling to figure out what one I would go to next, because there's been so many.
Was it how about, have you ever had a negative reaction where you feel like you quit playing a game and then you went out and maybe you were more aggressive or you were angry or maybe you were violent? Any instances like that?
I call that Madden. The only time I've broken a controller is playing Madden.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never physically broken a controller. I've given them a good toss many times, but I have never broken one. I've never thrown it that hard. One thing I do find myself doing if I get really frustrated and I'm holding a controller is I twist it.
Yeah,
I don't throw it, and I don't try to smash it. I'll twist it as hard as I can. It's very weird. Like, I don't know why I do that, but I do. But I've never broken a controller doing that, so maybe it's good.
So isn't it interesting, though? I've played plenty of video games that would be considered violent and a murder simulator, and the only time that I've actually broken a controller was one that's rated E. And
yeah, that kind of goes to what I was saying. Like, I'm not, when we're talking about this stuff, I'm not going to count when you just got frustrated because a game was hard or it had a glitch or something like that. We're talking about the content of games.
Well, they purposefully make it difficult. That's the thing. It's not right. Okay, when a game that I came away with a negative kind of sentimental feeling, I'd probably say The Last of Us, because I watched the first one. I watched the intro, and I came away with feeling like that's a cheap earn. It's like you tried to gut punch me early on, and I didn't like that.
I mean, I feel like a lot of games do that, honestly. Life is Strange, I feel like, kind of did that. Like, it always seemed like they delivered a gut punch, especially in the episode that ended the season. In season, they'd have little cliffhangers, but nothing like that. And then always kind of the capper for each season would have something in it that would try to infuriate you. And it's an obvious tactic to get you to come back for the next season and keep playing. But to me, it's a cheap tactic. You know, I think that you can find ways narratively to make people want to come back without having to resort to some cheap thing that's just going to anger the player.
Yeah, I know. Making players angry makes them invested.
Yeah, I mean, does it though? Does making them angry make them invested, or does providing a really good time for them make them invested?
I suppose if I was an executive at a video game company, would I care as long as they're spending money?
Right. Well, yeah, we know that. We know the game companies are greedy as crap. I mean, yeah, they don't care. If they could put out AO games every month and they sold like 30 million, they would be putting out AO games every month. That's just the way the industry works. It's driven by money and greed.
Yeah. I don't know where to go with this, because I don't think that there's going to be a sensible resolution. I think there's going to be an emotional one, and people's initial response to anything is always emotional, and it can be very difficult to get people away from that initial emotional response. And it comes back to something that I asked you on Ask Shane Anything. It's like, why do we focus on the negative things on video games rather than the things that they can do to enrich people's experiences in life and also help people get through difficult circumstances? and no one's focusing on that because
But
it's
don't you
easier
think that
just to focus
society
on
in
the.
general, society always tends to focus on the negative and ignore the positive? I mean, I hate to say it, but we just kind of live in a pessimistic time. I think so much stuff has been uncovered about people that we like. I think it even goes back to like things like O.J. Simpson. Some people may be too young to even know this, but O.J. Simpson, before,
People have probably watched the TV show.
yeah, I mean, they've done a bunch of documentaries, and I think it was just like the 25th anniversary of the murders or whatever. But I think that was kind of a breaking point for American society because, and again, a lot of you may be too young to know this, but before those murders occurred, O.J. Simpson was an American hero. I mean,
The
he
Juice
was celebrated. People loved him. He was one of the
movie
commentators
star.
on Monday Night Football. He was all over television commercials. He was in movies that people loved, like The Naked Gun. I mean, you could not turn on your television for more than an hour without seeing O.J. Simpson. And I think when people heard about the story, and I think most level-headed people knew that he committed the murders, I think it just kind of pulled the rug out from underneath everybody and just created this sense of unease for people where they're like, you know what? I don't feel like I can trust anybody anymore. And I wonder how much things like that have trickled down into our society to the point where we're just a bunch of pessimistic jerks.
Are you looking for a response to that?
Yeah, of course. I'm looking for a response to everything, McWomble. If you're drawing a blank, it's all good. You've already done a great job with your call. It looks like we got some other people in chat who want to jump in on this. So anything,
Okay.
anything last thing you want to say before you sign off?
I love everyone.
You know what? I do too, man. I don't really care what color or whatever anybody is. I love everybody. I give everybody a fair shake. I don't care where they come from, what they look like, or how they talk. I don't care. Like, to me, they're people. And so I'm with you on that, man. Like, I try to give everybody a fair shake. I let people show me whether they're good people or bad people. I don't let other people tell me whether someone's a good person or a bad person. That's just kind of how I roll. But anyway, McWomble, thank you for your call. We're opening up the line here so someone else can call in. But as always, great call, McWomble. Have a great weekend.
Happy Saturday.
All right, man. Have a good one. All right, so if anyone else wants to jump in on this is a controversial topic, and we're willing to discuss it. So call in. We have a new caller. His name it appears to be Lee Hooper. What's up, Lee? Welcome to today's High Score.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Of course, man. Thanks for joining the show. Lee is audio only today, but that's totally fine. What's your take on this, Lee?
So I just wanted to comment on the gun thing because
Okay.
the thing that drives me nuts about this, and I just want to say first, I'm black, and I served in the military, so
Okay.
it drives
Thank
me
you, by
crazy.
the way, for serving in the military.
I appreciate it. I hate it when people start talking about guns, and they really have no idea what they're talking about.
Are you talking about me specifically?
No, not you specifically. There's been some people on your show that have, but not you specifically.
I just want to say also that because this sounds like it's going to be more of a discussion about guns, and we don't want to stray too far from games, but it is important to this topic. I just want to, like, full disclosure, let you know that I grew up in the hills of West Virginia. I grew up with guns. I remember the day when I was 6 or 7 that my dad took me. He had given me a BB gun when I was like 4, and when I was 6 or 7, he took me out and taught me how to shoot. He taught me how to handle guns safely. And I lived with guns my entire adolescence. So I am not anti-gun. I just want to get that out of the way right away.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to say, to me, I mean, America is a violent culture, and America was pretty much founded on the gun. So,
why do you think that America is a violent culture, Lee?
well, it was founded in violence. I mean, that's literally how this land was taken. It was
No, you're right. We took it from Native Americans. Yeah.
Right. So
By
it was
force.
founded on the gun. It's always kind of been that way. There's never really been a time in American history there weren't mass shootings. We just didn't always call them mass shootings, for example.
Well, I don't know that I'd agree with that. I mean, I've recently was in a discussion with someone online, and my thing with guns is I have no problem with guns. I think everyone should be allowed to have a pistol a hunting rifle, and a shotgun. Semi-automatic rifles, to me, no go. And the reason I say that is because you're right. There have been people shooting other people with guns since guns were invented. But there's a big difference between shootings that happen with the bolt-action rifle and shootings that happen with semi-automatics.
Well, I agree. I mean, the thing is, though, times change. So when the Second Amendment, for example, was wrote, I mean, guns were not semi-automatic, but that's the
Yeah,
way
they
it
had
is
no
now.
idea what was coming. I mean,
Right.
think
So,
about the
so
weapon.
for
It took
example,
how long does it take to reload a musket? Like 2 minutes or something?
right,
I
like
mean,
for
when
example,
they wrote the Constitution and the Second Amendment, there were muskets that took 2 minutes to reload.
right. I was gonna say just for example, like I own an AR-15, and I was
Okay.
in the military, so I shot M16s.
Yep.
Those two don't shoot nowhere near the same speed. The military version's full auto fire
Yeah, but
or
I mean,
three
if
round
you're
burst.
a gun
Ours
guy,
are only
you know as
semi-automatic.
well as I do that it's very easy to modify those guns to make them fully automatic. You know that.
It's against the
Whether you do
law.
it with a bump stock or whether you get a file and file it down. Again, like I know guns. Like I know a lot of people who talk about this stuff and say we need gun laws, don't know squat about guns. I do. I grew up with guns. And you know as well as I do, it's very easy to modify a semi-automatic to be fully automatic.
Well, what I'm saying is, you know, anybody that wants to break the law can break the law. I mean, for
Yep.
them to try to use video games as a scapegoat, I'm like, okay, video games didn't make people start to become violent. I'm like, you can argue the reasons why we're getting more violent all of a sudden, it seems like. But I tell people, I'm like, an AR-15 is nothing in the military. It's nothing. They're called small arms for a reason.
I get that, but out in society, they're not small arms; they're big arms. Like one of the things I saw was an interview with one of the policemen from Dayton, and he said that first of all, the first responders in Dayton were amazing. Like they killed that guy within 30 seconds after the shooting started. That is incredible. But what one of the police officers said was, we were rolling up on the scene with handguns, and we could hear the guy's gun before we got to the scene. And they knew. They're like, probably some of us are going to die because we have pistols. He has a fully automatic rifle. And there's an example. That guy's rifle was fully automatic. I mean, it sounded like machine gun fire when he was firing his gun. And so they ran into harm's way thinking that several of them were going to be killed. And that police officer said, I'm tired of going up against people who have more firepower than we do. He's like, this is just one instance. We deal with this all the time when we go to house calls. There's some guy inside who's got an AR-15 or whatever, and we're walking up to the door with a pistol, and we feel like we're outgunned by people in our society. So, you're right. In the military, those guns aren't the weapon of choice, but out on the street, that's kind of a different story, don't you think?
Well, but I'm not being funny, but you also live a lot in California. Like I'm from Texas, so here I can carry my pistol out in the open, and it's not any problem. Nobody's gonna jump, or nobody's gonna start crying about it.
How do you
And
do you think that's the case if you took an AR-15 to Walmart?
I wouldn't take my AR-15 to
No, you
Walmart,
wouldn't because
but
you're sane.
no. I wouldn't take my AR-15 to Walmart because I'm black.
Oh. Well, it's like what I said earlier. If that kid had done that and he was black or brown, he would be dead. At least I think he would be dead.
Because even where you're from, I mean, over there in California, like they never had a problem. They didn't. There were people getting shot. No one had a problem with people walking around with rifles and guns until black people did it. Then Reagan decided we need to stop that. So
No,
to
you're absolutely
me,
right. Reagan
so to
also, by
me,
the
it's a
way,
different
is the one who closed down all the insane asylums. He's also the one who stripped funding for mental health services. And I know Reagan to a lot of people is like this god or whatever, but if you really dig into what Reagan did, like right now, the homeless situation that we have in California that all around the nation people are reporting on and calling our state a cesspool. And the reason there are so many homeless people here is because Reagan kicked them out of the insane asylums back in the 80s. And they've been living on the streets ever since because no one has refunded mental health. And again, that's a problem on both sides. No, both sides have decided, hey, you know what? Mental health isn't something that we want to dedicate a lot of resources to.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I my thing is, I don't listen. Like if the state of California doesn't want that, and the state of Texas is fine with it, I'm fine with that. If I visit California following their law, but like I said, the problem that I have is I don't like it being made like everybody's getting shot with an AR-15. Like practically nobody gets shot with an AR-15. Like that's a very rare instance. We've had a couple
but I think the
shootings
problem, though,
recent,
that people have is that it just, when these shootings happen where more than a few people are killed, it's almost always an AR-15 or some other semi-automatic rifle in that class.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, it's a semi-automatic, but not an AR or an AK or something like that. Like Columbine, when you're attacking people and they have no weapons, how are they gonna fight back? Like in Columbine, a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun and pump shotgun. I mean, in a 10-round magazine. Okay, well, you can kill a lot of people like that because they have nothing, right?
Well, I think it's fear. I don't know. Personally, at least I would like to think so. If I were ever involved in a mass shooting, if that person had a pistol or a shotgun or a bolt-action rifle or a knife, that gives you an opportunity to do something. You can tackle them and you can take them down. But when they have like a machine gun, basically, I don't know that you have a window to do that stuff. And when they can take a clip out that had 37 bullets in it and in 2 seconds shove another clip in it that has 37 bullets in it, you don't get that reprieve to actually try to do something to help the other people around you.
Well, I would say if you were to look in, like here in Texas, we used to couldn't keep guns, and you get arrested if you got pulled over for it.
Yeah.
And then we had a shooting called the Luby shooting.
Okay.
And in that shooting, all he had was a handgun, and he cleaned house.
I mean, a lot of that depends on how brave the people are that are around.
Well, there
honestly.
were people there were people that tried to charge him. They lost their lives. I mean, it's just real simple. He had the gun. And they didn't. I tell people, if you think someone with a revolver can't kill 20 people in a minute and a half or a minute, I'm like, you got some video watching to do.
Well, it depends on the size of the clip, right? And isn't that another point of contention that people want to get rid of gigantic clips?
Well, like I said, well, I was using the revolver as an example because a lot of people think,
I mean,
well,
look, you can't kill 20 people with a 6-shooter. You can't. Trust me. At least if I'm there, you're not killing 20 people with a 6-shooter because when you fire that 6th bullet, I'm coming after your ass while you try to pluck a bullet into each one of those 6 chambers.
Well, there's a lot of revolvers that carry a lot more and a lot less.
But see, that's what we're talking about, the high-capacity magazines.
And I'm just saying, like, the difference is if somebody's trained, they know what they're doing, and you don't, your chances are just about none.
I disagree with that. I completely disagree with that.
Okay. Well, I can understand that. But I wanted to ask you one other thing before I got off.
Okay.
It's related to something different, but it's related to games.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear because I've listened to y'all talk about how you feel. I understand that you want the best version of a game. That's why y'all choose to play on console.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, the best versions oftentimes are on PC.
But the thing that I don't understand is y'all talk about the importance of the console, and I'm like, well, if you're looking at the sales number, I mean the actual numbers of the money, where the money's made, I'm like, mobile and PC have walked all over consoles for years. I mean, they're not.
I mean, mobile lately for sure.
Well, mobile's 50% of the market, PC's 25% of the market, and the other 25% split between all the consoles.
Yeah.
So they're walking all over them. I mean, they're not even close. And I'm like, I don't have a problem with consoles. I don't have a problem with people playing on whatever they want to play on. But I just don't understand why people think that the console is so important as in continuing to drive along video games.
Well, I think a big part of it for us is we're based in the U.S. And I think if you look worldwide, sure, maybe I don't know where you're getting your data from. I don't believe that PC gaming is destroying console gaming even worldwide. But I know for a fact in the US, console gaming does destroy PC gaming. If you look at the number of copies sold for each game, it's not even close. I mean, look at like Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Perfect example. Gigantic game that people play on all platforms. The PC version is sold so poorly that a month after, it was hard to get a game of multiplayer on that game. And there are certain genres that thrive on PC, and they're always going to sell better on PC. MOBAs, always going to sell better on PC. Just a fact. Real-time strategy games, always going to sell better on PC because it has the superior interface. There was a time where first-person shooters dominated on PC, but that's all changed. So maybe worldwide PC gaming beats console gaming, but in the US, it's not even close.
Well, I was going to say that the only reason I was saying that is I agree with you that definitely certain genres sell better on console.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I'm
just
surprised,
saying-
honestly, that shooters have become more popular on console because undoubtedly a mouse and keyboard is a superior way to play that genre. Though lately we've seen some esports folks be able to win with controllers, which like blows my mind. Seriously. Like I couldn't imagine playing against a good PC player with a controller and beating them. I've played long enough to know that to me that's not even possible. So maybe the people who are playing Fortnite on PC are just a bunch of noobs.
Yeah, I was just looking at the actual amount of the market that they pick up. So to me, I'm like, no, I mean they'll get outsold in certain spots.
Yeah.
I'm a PC player, but I'm cheering for mobile, and the only reason I'm cheering for mobile is I just want people to be able to play because I want the game to make as much money as it can make.
Me too.
So we can keep getting the game. So I don't care for exclusives. I understand they're important for some people, like you're trying to sell a console. But for me, ultimately, anything that can get more people to play so they can make more money, so we can get more of it, is a go for me.
I agree with you 1000%, Lee. And I wish more people had our attitude and just wanted the industry to do well in general and didn't create these kind of tribal divides where I'm a PC guy or I'm an Xbox guy or I'm a Nintendo fan or I'm a Sony fan. I mean, I got over that so long ago when I was like a teenager. But it seems like I keep thinking that every successive generation of consoles, it's going to go away, and it just never does. I think people just like to argue on the internet, and if they don't choose a side, they can't do it.
I appreciate you taking my call.
Oh, Lee, thanks for calling in, man. It was great to get a different perspective, especially someone who's been in the military. And again, thank you so much for your service, man. I mean, I mean it. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, and by the way, I did join on Patreon.
Oh, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And hey, please come back next week, man. We want people like you who are intelligent and have a lot of insights that maybe come from a different perspective from ours. So we'll see you back here next Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific.
All right, thank you.
Have a great night, Lee. Great call. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who have different perspectives so that we can debate this stuff. And I did like, too, that Lee brought it back around to games after a bit, because this is a gaming show, and we don't want to get in a gigantic political debate about guns. All right, we got another call. I knew this topic was going to be huge. Here's Mike's Q.
Hey, Shane, how's it going?
What's going on, man? How are you today?
Hey, do you see my camera?
I do not see your camera, actually.
There it should.
Oh, there you
There
are.
it should.
What's going on, man? Let me get you onto the show here. For those of you who are wondering, I know sometimes, the screen will go dark during this show. That's because I am running I'm doing three things. I'm trying to be a host of a show and have an intelligent conversation. I'm answering the stuff on this side from Skype, and on this side, I'm running the TriCaster. So please forgive me if there's a couple seconds of black. Generally what happens is I get really involved in a discussion with one of you, and I totally space on the fact that our B-roll has run out. So this is all about discussion, and I think we're having good discussion here. So what's your perspective? What's going on?
To answer your very original actual question of, have you ever had video games affect you in a certain way?
Yeah.
And I absolutely have had video games affect me most of the time. It comes from one of two things: either an actual tweak in a story that involved a character that I felt I had started to get some sort of attachment to.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of times I did have to like shoo my wife out of the room. I'm like, this is 35 hours of payoff. Like, I can't answer your question about the groceries right now. And so that's one. And then the other way it affects is mostly when I'm playing games unhealthily and play them way too long, way too late into the night.
Are you talking
And
about like a bender where you like just give up a whole weekend to playing a game?
Or just even when it goes like 6 or 8 hours and my wife doesn't know it's been 6 or 8 hours of me playing that game. And I sneak into the bedroom at 4 a.m. and then like I can't get to sleep because I'm like, oh, like that place I didn't check there in Hollow Knight. Oh, where am I going now? Like, and then I like wake up thinking about like, did I do everything I could have done for that? Like, and it's bad because it's been affecting me. Like, makes me think, sleep, eat, whatever I'm doing. And so those are the two main ways that video games have affected me. But to get to the question of what it's after, of like, have I ever played a game and wanted to go out in a way, edify or imitate the game?
Yeah.
And some games, yes. But those were games that involved bows and arrows, swords, and other stuff like that. And
Okay.
I would be inspired by some of those to actually go out and make said items, because like I've called in once or twice while making metalwork stuff to this show.
Yeah, I remember
And
that. That was great. Yeah, you were
so,
outside. One time you were on this show and you were outside.
oh yeah, I was outside and I was welding and I pulled out my phone. I'm like, I gotta jump in on this, and so
Yeah.
I'm sitting there with a welding helmet on.
And that's one thing to keep in mind, folks. Like, you can literally just use your phone to come on this show. And you can turn off video if you want, come in and audio, as Lee did, the last caller, who was great. But you can do this anywhere. I'm not going to recommend doing it while you're driving your car, but you can. So, yeah, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so it generally inspires me in a positive way to go and create something, not destroy something.
Interesting.
And that's the short answer of it. Like there's been items I've worked on because I was like, wow, that thing in Bloodborne is really cool. I want to try and make a version of one of those weapons, or I want to make a weapon that crosses two different genres of things. And so mostly video games inspire me to create, either physically with wood and steel, or to write small stories, or like I'm working on a video game. It's going very slow.
Oh, wow.
I wish I was.
Good
I
luck.
Wish I was no, yeah, and it's for me. It's I have no illusions of it ever giving me a cent, or maybe even anyone else playing it, but it's for me. So video game. The short answer to your question: most of the time, they inspire me to create, not to destroy. Even if it is a game full of death and destruction, about other stuff like that.
So you feel like they motivate you to do good things. Can you think of any times where that was the opposite?
Well, if not motivated me to do bad things, there were some games that did kind of like sicken me a bit, and just made me unhappy.
What
Made me
can
unhappy.
you pluck out any specific games?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of that name. It was the Spec Up the Line.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people point to that
Yeah.
game as one that disturbed them. I mean, I played it, and it didn't affect me after I got done playing it, as far as like how I interacted with others. But it definitely,
Exactly.
I felt like there was this cloud kind of following me around for a while after I got done, because some of the subject matter in that game is really heavy. And it
Yeah.
also kind of crosses the line, and this is something that Call of Duty Modern Warfare is doing as well, the new Call of Duty that's coming. They kind of cross the line that games generally don't cross with chemical weapons. I think
Yeah,
there was
and-
sarin gas in
Yeah.
Spec Ops: The Line, and there's that
Yeah.
one scene where like basically a guy just like melts from the sarin. Like
Well, yeah,
we
there was
need that stuff to
there was
understand
also
the
the
realities
scenes
of
with
war,
the
but
There's also the scenes with the white phosphoring of the
white phosphorus,
civilians.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And Call
but-
of Duty, one of the kill streaks in the new Call of Duty, I believe, is either white phosphorus or sarin gas. And for
That stuff
whatever
is
reason,
nasty.
that's just a bridge
stuff is
that
nasty.
games have never crossed, or rarely crossed, kind of until now.
Or they usually use those items as something that the bad guy is doing.
Right.
And ergo,
You have to stop them. Yeah, they're using it
justification
on
for
everybody
stop-
else, and you
for
need to be the
stopping.
good guy and stop them. Yeah, you don't use it usually as the player.
Correct. But what I did want to answer is, in I know in my family, I never was playing a video game and wanted to go up and I don't know, do something harmful to someone else. But in my family, all the time, uh, when we were young kids, watching martial arts movies would inspire us to go kick and punch the living bejeebers out of each other.
Yeah.
Like not because we wanted to hurt them, but because
I think a
that
lot of
guy
people
looks
have
so.
pointed that out, that like
Yeah.
kids will play like Smash Brothers or whatever, and then after they're done, they kind of reenact what happened in the game with their
Yeah.
friends or whatever. I can see that, absolutely.
Yeah, like, and my niece, like watches her dad play a bunch of video games and watches like some movies and stuff with him, and my niece, who is 3 years old, someone I don't know how the subject came up, but they were talking about strangers, and she's like, yeah, and if a stranger came in the house, I would take that sword off the wall and hit him. And I'm like, what? And this girl is 3 years old. She's the sweetest, like pink princess, like love her sister, take care of her younger brother, but in her mind, she's like, oh yes, bad people, you're supposed to smite them with the sword. And I'm like, what the?
Did you ask her where she got that from?
Oh, I knew.
She's like,
100%
I got
where
it
she
from watching you. It's like
Well,
those
I-
old
I-
bag drug commercials from the 80s where the kid's
Well,
like, I learned to smoke pot by watching you.
Yeah, or that the Cat's in the Cradle, like my son was just like me.
Yeah.
Like, but so to be honest, non-interactive entertainment has been more of an inspiration, I guess, like for me to kick, punch, or do violent stuff like that. But it was always in fun. It's like, oh, like it'd be so cool to, kick my brother if he flew like 15 feet across the room and seemed to be unscathed, and we got up and kept fighting. But it's not how it happens. And your parents say, hey, dude, don't do that.
Yeah.
But my parents, I also got mixed messages from my parents because one Christmas they had found at Ollie's Discount Market, they found 12 pairs of those gigantic green Hulk gloves and bought it for the whole family. So the whole family had giant green fists and was going around pummeling each other on Christmas Day. It was great.
Not video game related, by the way.
Exactly. Like, that's what I'm saying. Video games themselves have never really ever given me an inclination to do any of that stuff. Some video games, actually, like the very gun porn ones, actually have inspired me because I do collect and I do own firearms.
Yep.
They've inspired me to look at different builds and stuff. Most of it, just because I really enjoy those ins and outs and the actual manufacture of firearms. But no, video games themselves have never inspired me to do anything violent to anyone else.
Since you enjoy guns, maybe before you go, you can give us kind of our take on guns, or on games instead of guns being blamed for mass shootings.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm like, my household itself kind of has both sides of the, I don't know, people's claims and arguments, because I mean, I would do tons of things, but I do own guns and I do enjoy shooting sports. But my wife is a mental health counselor.
Oh.
And so she's...
Wow, you do have both sides there.
Yeah, no, the thing when she has to come home and debrief to me about so much emotional and physical violence that her different clients go through, because she works with a lot of the Medicaid and basically the poorest level of people who are looking for
so she deals with people who can't afford health insurance, and
most of the time, yes.
She is their only outlet for mental health help.
Correct. She works with Catholic Charities out of Harrisburg, and so most of her clients are some of the poorest and ones who are, say, court mandated sometimes to get counseling, and those who just really need it, who are either recovering from drug and alcohol problems or have just been in terrible situations. And
I love the painting of the two of you in the background, by the way.
Oh, thank you. My
It's like you're talking about her, and we know what she
Yep.
looks like because we can see her
Yep.
there.
Yep. And the thing I see the most is like she actually enjoys shooting guns with me occasionally. But like she on the whole doesn't like them herself. But when she is debriefing me, without using anyone's name, of course, but
Yep.
she has to debrief about the different things that happen with her clients. She's never mentioning like these people who've been through so many terrible things, and some of the stories that these people have claimed to have been like part of prostitution rings and stuff like that, and seen
Yeah.
people like attacked and beat up and killed and stuff like that, over drugs and over all sorts of horrible things. I see that the problem itself is so much deeper than just what people are using, because most of her clients never interacted with a gun at all, and they still were around multiple deaths of friends and families and stuff like that. And I don't have an answer for you. Here, I'll give you my attitude. If
Okay.
me turning in, throwing away, destroying every single gun I had, if I knew that that would save someone else's life, or if that would stop something, I would do it right now. I'd get up out of my computer and go destroy my firearms. But I don't believe that that is the answer. But I believe that there has to be some work on both sides, that there is problem with, because the United States, yes, it is the #1 gun ownership country in the world. That is indisputable.
Oh yeah. I mean, you
But
saw the
we're-
chart that we ran on Game Face, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And I saw that before. But we're 86th in the world for violent crimes. And I'm not talking about mass shootings. I'm talking about violent crimes is where someone died because someone else did something against them. Like,
Really? We're
and
86th?
86th. 86th
I'd like
in
to
the
see
world.
that data. I don't know if I believe that.
Well, I'm using the two articles off of Wikipedia. If you
Interesting.
look at gun ownership and violent crimes, like both of those articles are from the Wikipedia, and that's
So we
that's
have
just
that. Why I'm having a problem believing that data is because we have far and away the most violent gun crime. So you're saying all other forms of violent crime were way below the curve? Because we'd have to be to kind of get back to that mean. You see what I'm saying?
no, yeah, I do. And but what the stuff for mass shootings, part of their criteria is that it can't be gang related, and it has to be in a public venue, and it can't be part of like a robbery or some other crime.
Right.
And so
It has
that,
to be a shooting just for the sake of shooting and killing people. There
Correct.
can't be any other motivation other than that. Yeah.
correct. And so a lot of other places where it's death with guns or other things because of some other reason, or it happens to be in a private residence, it doesn't count towards the mass shootings. But like I'm not here to say that, because I don't believe the United States is the most violent country in the world.
Which country do you think is the most violent in the world? I want to hear.
I thought it was Brazil, but
Or Venezuela, maybe?
Venezuela actually is like number, I forget, like 8 or something.
I mean,
like
after
that.
the last 12 months, I'm guessing at this point it's probably
Yeah.
going to be #1 for 2019.
Yeah, and
Or
the
maybe
thing is,
Hong Kong, actually, with what's going on in Hong
Yeah.
Kong right now. That city in particular, the crime rate there probably is going to skyrocket.
Yeah. But so my thing is, I personally own like a couple of guns, and most of my family, like here in Western or the Southern Pennsylvania, we enjoy gun culture and stuff.
Oh, come
like
on,
that.
you're a Central PA guy.
Yeah, South Central.
Yeah,
South
yeah.
Central.
At least, I'm from Pennsylvania, and so if
Yeah.
you're not from Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, you're just a Central PA person.
Yeah, we're the forgotten middle.
We're the
forgotten middle.
drive-through areas of
We're the
Pennsylvania.
forgotten middle. But to answer your question, I think there's other problems in this country that are being people are expressing there's like the racist shit, the like the Nazi shit, like all sorts of stuff like that. Of course, people don't want those people having guns. Like, and this level
Well, I think, of course, some people don't want those people having guns. There are absolutely a lot of people in America that are A-OK with those people having guns.
But me as a me, like I am a Republican, but even me, a Republican who owns and enjoys firing like gun culture.
I mean, that's
sees that there
typical
has to
Republican,
be-
isn't it?
No,
Yeah, it
I mean
is.
maybe
Yeah,
it is, but I'm saying as a typical, you could call me a typical Republican, but I still think that there is tons of stuff that we need to do for people to responsibly own firearms. And most of my friends, like we have some of the cool, neat guns, but all of us have gone through the paperwork and spent the hundreds of dollars in taxes, like just for the permits to be able to use those and to use those guns. And none of us have ever been arrested for doing it. None of us have done any of those things like that you're talking about, that it's easy to do. Like I easily could have, like
You're not a
shortened
mass
my
murderer.
I know, but I'm saying
The
but
problem
I'm-
is the people who do want to do this stuff can do it very easily.
correct, and that's part of what I'm saying. If we ban them, if we ban guns or whatever, that doesn't.
I don't think
stop-
anyone wants to ban guns. They want to ban semi-automatic assault rifles.
Well, Ian McGarr wants to ban guns.
Well,
He says
I
ban
don't.
guns.
It's like I said earlier, I think everyone should have a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. Semi-automatics can go. My friends who are really into semi-automatics from West Virginia, even they can't give me a good reason why they need them. They're just like, I like them. I like to shoot them. They're fun. And then I asked them,
Oh.
but is that entertainment worth the lives of these people who are dying to them? And that's where the conversation just kind of ends.
Yeah, no, and I will fully admit, most of what I have them for is recreation.
Yeah, that's
Like,
all I have them for. They're like, I just go for target practice. I'm like, bro, you can't stop like target practice to save some lives. Like, come on, man.
And that's why I opened with that thing. It's like if me not having that stuff saved someone's life, I would do it in a heartbeat.
But you don't know what happened. Like, what if someone steals your gun and goes and does something with it, files it down and turns it into fully automatic, and then goes on a shooting spree? The root of the problem is the instrument that allows the mentally unstable person to use it for evil.
Yeah, and all that work that you just described, that's a lot of work for someone to go through to be able to do that. And then we had a guy over in Japan who, because he was angry and mentally unstable, took $5 worth of gasoline and burned down an anime studio and killed 35 people.
Yep.
I'm saying that guy invested $10 worth of materials and killed 35 people.
Yep. You're right. But that was kind of the first time that someone had used that tactic. And usually when that happens, people start becoming more alert. Like, I guarantee right now, people in Japan are like, okay, what do we have to do to make sure someone can't just come into our building with a can of gas and kill us all? It's like when in Europe, when they started using vehicles to try to kill people, and they started installing the pillars around the areas. It has to happen the first time, and then what matters is how you react to it after that. And also, I feel like this show's getting way too about guns and not enough about games, but
that's why
it kind of is all wrapped together.
That's why I tried to open up with
I
your
hear
actual
you.
question.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because I knew I could talk long about the gun side of it, and I wanted to actually answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, and look, again, like, I'm glad that you called, because it's good to get the perspective of other people who have different beliefs or different ideas than I do. And I don't even know that you and I do have different ideals. You like guns more than I do, but I think we both kind of have the same idea as far as how we can fix it. Mental health. I'm leaning a little more heavily on gun control than you, but I think we both agree that it needs to be a two-pronged approach.
Yeah. People not wanting to harm other people for whatever reason, whether they had a falling out, whether they're different color skin, whether or not they're a different political persuasion from another country. People not wanting to hurt each other over stupid, pitiful, like abysmal crap like that. would be a wonderful start.
There's a lot of
It's a-
miserable people in our society now. I think a lot of it has to do with social media because everyone on social media puts on their best face and it makes it seem like everyone has a great life. And then the people who don't have great lives are like, wait a minute, what am I doing wrong? Why do I have to live this way? I think that has a lot to do with it. There's no scientific data on that. That's just anecdotal evidence from me. So take that for what it's worth. But
all right. So I just wanted to make sure to chirp in because I know sometimes I have a slightly less represented viewpoint. Actually, just mostly from the video game industry because there's so much of it is West Coast based. A lot of people share a lot of political opinions and stuff that aren't or that are much more. I don't know.
Well, I'll say this. I think it's a misnomer that people in California don't like guns. That's not true.
No.
I mean, I think a lot of people
it's
around
not.
the world in the country are like, oh, it's California, they hate guns. No, there's people here love guns just as much as they do everywhere else. But I think what you see in California, and obviously I noticed it before I moved here, now that I've lived here for a while, it's even more obvious to me, is most stuff starts in California, and then it gets assimilated out to the rest of the country. Some stuff takes longer than others depending on the areas it's assimilating to. But most of the stuff starts here, and then eventually it spreads around the rest of the country. And I think probably what will happen is California will figure it out, and they'll take a step that will seem extreme at first, just like a lot of the other laws that California passes at first. It'll seem crazy at first, but over time you'll start seeing the data. I think a good thing to look at is like marijuana, for instance. Everyone was like, oh, demonized marijuana. California legalizes it. They put out the numbers of all the taxes that they're collecting. Again, money, blood money. They put out all the data on all the money they're making off of the taxes. And now all of a sudden, a lot of states who would have never dreamed of legalizing marijuana are like, okay, well, let's start with medicinal and then we'll go to recreational, just like California did. And I have a feeling that laws and mental health stuff are probably going to start here because, in all honesty, where mental health is concerned, California has the biggest crisis of them all. So a lot of times necessity is the mother of invention, and I have a feeling that might happen with California and gun-related deaths as well.
But the amount of things you guys think cause cancer is still astounding to me.
Well, don't say you, because I'm not.
Yeah,
that
sorry.
way. I think that's another problem, is that everybody stereotypes people who live in California, and they think they're all the same, and that is not the case at all.
No. I've visited the fine state of California a couple of times, and I love the state.
Yeah.
It's just really difficult to have some conversations with some people from there. But no, thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thanks for being on. Hey, you always do a great job on this show. Call back every week, please.
All right, let's get someone else in here.
All right, man. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. Wow, this is amazing. These calls are great. You guys are doing an amazing job. You're totally knocking it out of the park. Oh, I just closed Skype. So you're going to have to give me a minute to get it back up. I wouldn't mind taking another call on this topic because I can look at chat and I can tell that you guys really want to talk about it. All right, I'll take one more, and that's it, and then we're going to move on. All right, here we got, it appears to be Daniel McAndrew. Are you there, Daniel?
Hi, Shane. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, man. It's Saturday,
My video.
and I'm hanging out with a bunch of gamers talking about gamer stuff. It's hard to be too pissed off when that's the case. How's your weekend going right now?
Just trying to sort out my camera for you.
There he is. What's up,
Sorry.
Daniel? Welcome
Is
to
it working?
today's high score. Oh, you just disappeared.
Sorry, just trying to sort out my camera. There
It's
we
all
go.
good, man.
Okay, perfect.
There he is.
Perfect.
We got you for good now?
Yeah, I'm just pausing the stream as well because it's slightly delayed and then I can hear myself twice.
Right. Yeah. You get that echo or whatever. So what's your
Yeah.
take on this stuff? And this is our last call on this. And we have, again, this show always works out like this. Like, I bust my butt and I put together all these topics. Like, I have like 7 topics for today. We're still on the first topic, and technically the show is supposed to be over in like 15 minutes. But again, to me, the show is more about great discussion than making sure that all of my pre-show work comes to fruition. And I knew this topic was going to generate a lot of calls, and I'm glad it has, because it's something that we need to talk about. So what's your take, Daniel?
So I jumped in a bit late, so I only saw the last two callers. So it's quite interesting to hear their perspectives.
Sure.
And obviously, being from the UK, it's for us. It's just quite interesting to view from the outside in, and what people think on the ground. I think I completely agree with you in the whole semi-automatic weapon situation. I don't really see the point of using those, and also the fact that how you can blame guns into the video game, like blame video games for causing gun violence, seems a bit far-fetched to a point. But I think the main
part of the problem is that the theories that people throw out there can kind of make sense to people, because they'll often say video games desensitize you to violence or to gun violence. And I could see where an average person who doesn't play games or maybe isn't interested in violent films or violent television would be like, that makes sense to me. If you see a lot of people being killed by guns, then the next time you see it, it doesn't impact you as much. Now, whether that's true or not, who frickin' knows? But the point is I can see where some people may look at that and say, that's enough proof for me.
Yeah, I think the issue, I think a lot of people, like the last two people who are discussing about it, I think my main issue is that it is the access to the guns. Like, as in the link between video game violence and using those semi-automatic weapons on Call of Duty, and then being able to do it in real life in most of the world isn't a possibility.
Yeah.
So in the US, I'm not saying just playing devil's advocate. In the US, they can then go to a shop and be in that Call of Duty like mode if that's the way they're trying to trend down. So just ban semi-automatic weapons. And then you've cut off that line, and then you can't blame violent games for violent action like that because they can't get hold of them.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so that could be the rebuttal.
Look, I've been in enough of these discussions that I can tell you exactly what a gun enthusiast would rebut that with. I mean,
yeah,
they will say you can't get rid of the guns, and they're absolutely right. It's not like we can say assault rifles or semi-automatics are banned and snap our fingers, and the next day all those guns just magically disappear. They're going to be there. But my contention is you got to start somewhere. You can't just keep putting it off, because you're right, it's not going to change things probably next year. Maybe a little bit in 2 years, maybe a little bit more in 3 years. But when you get 10 to 15 years down the road, it will make a huge difference. Those weapons break. People lose them. People give them away. Like, stopping the flow, you have to do it at some point, or you're just doing nothing is the worst thing you can do. And that's pretty much what we've done time and time again. And people just try to find the easy excuse, which is always video games. For whatever reason, it's always video games.
And I think what's made it easier to scapegoat video games is the recent, and linking it slightly with game addiction, and that people, like children, because obviously, I'm a school teacher, so I work with kids, and in the classroom, them reacting with losing their mobile game, or they're having their console confiscated for them. They act in an angry way.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think it's also on the parents allowing them to play games that aren't age appropriate. It's like, I wouldn't take my 10-year-old to an 18 or an R-rated movie in the US, in the UK. A lot of parents wouldn't do that. I've sat down with parents this evening and said, your child's playing this game. Do you think why are you allowing that? Would you take them to this film? They said, oh no, of course not. I was like, well, that's what the certificate's there for. It's not there.
Yeah, that's what ratings are for.
And a lot of them go, oh, we didn't realise. And it's just that education in some ways that, like, and I think that doesn't help. So then they see that, and then the game addiction thing, and they kind of bring that into the discussion to a point to then go, oh, it must be video games, and then the World Health Organization said, well, game addiction's a thing, so now we can try and tag on the fact that guns violence is also maybe linked to video games as well. It's not a very good sign, I don't think, personally, and I'm sad really, because I don't think games really should be blamed at all. They've got nothing to do with it. I think it's like anything, going to the cinema, It's like watching any violent film, any violent TV show, watching Game of Thrones, and then deciding you're a Dothraki man and going cutting people down with a sword. Like, it does get a bit silly when we start doing that.
I think another problem too is that when things happen like Walmart the last couple of days where it took down signage for games and films,
I shared that
and then
on
it
Twitter
pulled it off. The problem is that they don't pay for that. Walmart doesn't pay for that. So people will be like, that's disgusting and that's stupid. But literally within an hour, they'll get in their car and they'll drive to Walmart and spend $200. And it's hard to get, it's easy to get people to speak with their mouths. It's harder to get people to speak with their money. I think that's been a problem, is that a lot of people, and not just retail stores, but I think a lot of people know that they can have a controversial stance, and the first couple days things might be a little rough, but it eventually blows over. And I think you can see that with what's happening with gun control right now with Mitch McConnell. Everyone's piling on him. People are following him around Kentucky, like railing on him. He tries to do public speeches, and people are chanting him down or whatever. And then he comes out and he says, oh, you know what? We're going to deal with this. We're going to discuss gun control in the fall. So he knows. He's like, okay, I'm going to deal with this crap for a few days until all this heat blows over. I've already said we're going to talk about this in the fall. By the time we get to the fall, everyone's going to forget about it and no one's going to care. I mean, look, if somebody can go into a school and kill a bunch of preschoolers and then nothing gets done, I mean, what's it going to take? What's it going to take?
It's interesting, the last guy's stats, because I've been looking, while he was talking, I thought I'd do some own research. And violent crime is quite an interesting category to use, because that is knife crime, using a blunt instrument, no instrument, so just punching someone, any of those things. But on mass shootings in 2019, the US is number 10.
Yeah, I mean, look, that data's. Look, I don't want to like bust his balls, but to me, that data's garbage because people aren't going to commit crimes with knives in their fists because they have guns. Why would they use a knife or a fist when they can use a gun? I mean,
So the US is 10th.
Yeah, I mean, that data's not good.
Per 100,000 people in the country. And above you is Honduras, Venezuela, El Salvador, Swaziland, Guatemala, Jamaica, Brazil, Colombia, Panama. And then if I carry on going, and if you just look at the list, without being too thinking about the world and stuff, it's quite interesting that you're really the only kind of modern technology first world country in that list that doesn't have supposed to have a democracy they're all like
third world countries. Let's be honest.
Yeah, basically. So that's what I was trying to say. So it's interesting that the US is like right in the middle of all these third world countries, and it just shows to me that when you've got like New Zealand, for instance, in 6 months they've banned semi-automatic weapons.
I mean, it didn't take that long. I thought their prime minister did it in like 2 days.
She did, but I think with legislation
after
and
it had
things,
to go through all the checks and balances and everything. Yeah.
But yeah, so
I mean, look, you can do it, but it doesn't, and it's not going to change things overnight. Like I said earlier, it takes time. It takes time for those weapons to break, or for them to be given to some, or for people to die. I mean, there are people in this country that have like 500 guns. I'm not exaggerating. I know people that have like 200 guns, and eventually those people die. And they're like, I'm going to give all my guns to my nephew or my niece. And their niece or their nephew is like, I don't want this crap. They take them to the police station. There's X number of guns off the street. You can't have a defeatist attitude. You have to have the attitude that we want to try to get it fixed. And then you have to start trying to get it fixed and stick to it. Because the U.S. banned semi-automatic rifles in the 90s. And then it lasted like 10 years. And it came up to be renewed. And Congress didn't renew it. So, and if you look at the data, during that 10-year period, crime went down. Gun crimes went down. And if you can extrapolate that out across 50 years, imagine what can happen and how much our society can change. So anyway, I think we need to move on, but thank you for calling in.
I was just going to say one more thing. Sorry. About the gun. I've got no issue with America having guns because I worked in PA for a bit in summer camp, and all the people's houses I went to afterwards in near Harrisburg, they all had massive gun safes. And I just think the semi-automatics and just
me too.
A bit.
I've said it several times. I'm okay with pistols. I'm okay with shotguns. I'm okay with one-shot bolt-action rifles. Buy a billion of those if you want. I'm totally cool with it. It's a gun that can kill 30 people in 30 seconds that I have a problem with.
Yep.
That's kind of where I stand. Nobody, this is also a myth. Nobody wants to take away people's guns. It's like people go to absolutes. It's like, oh, you want gun control? You want to take all my guns? It's like, no, nobody wants to take all your guns. We want to get these killing machines off the street as quickly as we possibly can. That's really all it is. There are some people who hate all guns, but they're in the vast minority.
What I'd be interested to see is the people who have committed these crimes, how long have they had these automatic weapons for?
Yeah.
Because have they gone and bought them then? Because then it is a checking system. And if they didn't have them on, then you said they're in the system. But actually, if a lot of these crimes are done because they picked up this weapon a month or 6 months or 5 months ago, then actually, if it was banned, then that wouldn't happen. They might have got them on the black market, but that's a lot harder to do and sort out and all those kind of things. So I think you're right. Banning in the first instance semi-automatic weapons
I think honestly
definitely have a big impact.
Yeah, we got to move on. We've been on this topic for an hour and a half now. We may not even be able to do another topic. We're supposed to end the show in 3 minutes. We're gonna do another topic just because we kind of need to. But I do want to thank all of you guys for calling in. Everybody was civil. Everyone spoke like adults. Nobody got aggro with each other. This is how we're supposed to discuss stuff. This is how we can all come to an agreement and we can finally make change. So this has been an amazing discussion. I apologize to people maybe who are watching the archive and they're like, oh my God, this went way off the rails and hardly talked about video games. I think it's an important discussion that we all need to have. And unfortunately, in our case, because we do love video games, it does directly relate to us. So thanks to everyone who called in. It was a great discussion. Yeah,
Cheers.
This is great. This is the type of stuff I hoped to have happen on today's High Score when I very first launched it. So thanks for coming on the show, man. Have a great weekend.
Cheers.
All right, brother. All right. Great calls. You guys are knocking it out of the park today. I really appreciate it. Again, we're here every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Usually we don't talk about stuff like this on today's High Score. It's usually just all games. But special times call for special considerations, and that's what we're doing here today. So let's move on to the next topic. I got one topic left, and I actually have like 5 left on the rundown, and I can only do one more. So I need to decide. I'll let you guys vote. How about that? So these are the remaining topics that I had for today's show. 8K, and you guys may have seen a poll that we put up earlier today on our Twitter feed that we were going to roll into that. Death Stranding no longer being a PS4 exclusive and just how important exclusives are anymore going forward. The other story we're going to discuss was Take-Two sent a private investigator to a YouTuber's house to basically bust his balls and arrest him for leaks related to Borderlands 3. And then the final discussion was going to be about Remedy and Control, because Control is not tracking well. And I wanted to have a discussion about Remedy's games to see if we could figure out why its games, despite being so high quality usually, do not do particularly well at retail. So choose. In chat, let me know which topic you guys want to tackle. Let's see. Now, you guys are still debating guns. All right. Well, I'm going to pick then, since you guys aren't interested. You guys can debate amongst yourselves while I move on to the next topic. Let's see. Let's talk about 8K. Because, again, I put up a poll for this earlier, and we have... I don't know if we have data. I wouldn't call a Twitter poll data, actually. We have some anecdotal evidence that we can go on. We can go through on this. So, 8K. I don't have a 4K TV. And I'll just put up the poll right now and show you guys what you guys are saying as far as what you have. So the poll was, what resolution is your current gaming TV? Some of y'all are still on 720p. I feel bad for you. I hope you guys can upgrade, although you're going to have to make a big jump because I went to a Best Buy last night and I could not find a 1080p TV. So you're going to make the jump from 720 to at least 4K at some point. Then there's 1080p. Still hanging tough there. And then 4K with 56% is the winner. So most of you guys have upgraded to 4K at this point. 8K, I think one person said they had an 8K TV. I don't know that they do. Well, I don't know. So most people, the vast majority, are at 4K at this point. Second is 1080p, like me. Although we do have a 4K TV. I had bought it for the office. Then we lost our office. I took it home. I put it in the bedroom, and now my wife won't give it up. So we have a 4K TV in our bedroom. We get no 4K programming, and I've never hooked a console up to it other than when I had it at our old office. So we do own a 4K TV, but all my gaming happens at 1080p. So let's talk about 8K. They're asking for encores. I don't know what kind of encore you're looking for. Encore of what? So let's talk about 8K. 8K is, and I've actually had problems trying to figure this out. I was doing research this morning, and I cannot figure out if 8K finally replaces film as far as resolution is concerned. I know Matt says it does. I've seen other people say that it doesn't. Truth be told, if you go to see a movie in a theater right now, the best that you can really hope for is 2K. 4K, and I have the data here, 4K is in just 20% of theaters. So roughly 20% of the films that you see are actually being projected in 4K. If you go to Best Buy, there are bestbuy.com. Right now, there are just 9 televisions available that display in 8K. And they run the gamut. The cheapest one is $3,000, and it's really small. And then the most expensive one is $70,000. Could you imagine going to Best Buy and plunking down your credit card and having them charge $70,000 to your credit card for a television? That seems crazy to me. But maybe somebody did it. I don't know. So 8K televisions still are a niche. And one thing I'll say, too, about myself still being a 1080p gamer is that I did buy a 1080p TV right at the end of the 1080p generation. So I got a Panasonic Plasma 65-inch with, it's like 120 hertz. It's the best 1080p TV ever made, basically. And I bought that right at the end of the 1080p era. So I am lucky. Like, I had a 720p TV that I bought at the beginning of the HD era. That lasted me for like 9 years before I finally upgraded to a 1080p TV. And now I am kind of one of the people in the market that's looking to upgrade. But should you upgrade to 4K, or should you wait and go to 8K? Now, I realize some of you guys haven't really had a choice because maybe your TV died, or you were sharing a TV with somebody who owned the TV and they took it away, and you had to buy your own 1080p TV or your own TV, and the only thing that was available at that point is 4K. Because again, like I said, you can't really buy a 1080p TV at Best Buy anymore. So some of you guys have had to upgrade to 4K because you didn't have a choice. But let's be honest, there's hardly any 4K content at all. If you use Netflix and Amazon or YouTube, honestly, they're the best sources for that content. There is zero broadcast 4K content. The NFL has been touting 4K broadcasts for the Super Bowl for the last 3 years, and it's never done it. It talks about it. It's in all the pre-promotion, the pre-marketing for the Super Bowl, and ultimately when the day comes for them to broadcast it, it does not have a 4K signal. So even the biggest entertainment, sports, whatever, the most highly rated thing that happens on TV every year still doesn't run in 4K. And I know most of the people who watch this, and myself included, we all probably consume far more content on Netflix, on Amazon, on YouTube than we do traditional services like DirecTV or cable television. But if you look at the actual data, the vast majority of people still consume most of their content via television, via DirecTV, Dish Network, Comcast Cable, whatever. We are the early adopters. We are the evangelists. I'm the person who goes to my mom's house for a visit and I tell her about the hot new stuff. My mom, by the way, does have a smart TV that does all that. We just bought her a brand new TV this last holiday season. And when I was home for a wedding a few weeks ago, I showed her that her TV could use YouTube and Netflix and Amazon, and her mind was blown. She had the TV for 6 months and never even realized all the stuff that it did. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of people out there like my mom who either have no clue that their new TV does that stuff or just have no interest whatsoever in it in the first place. So what is it that's going to get us to 8K when 4K seems like a complete missed opportunity? This is your chance to call in. Hit us up at Sifted Games on Skype. What will it take for you to buy an 8K TV? Got a caller. Mike's Q is back. What's up?
Hey Shane, I'll make this quick. And it was something that seemed similar in your poll. Our television downstairs, because of my roommate, is a big 65-inch Samsung 4K curved television.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful for watching movies and other stuff like that. However, most of my gaming, and I actually recently had to buy a monitor, actually right before the Amazon days or Prime days. And because of my budget, I had to basically decide between like a 144 hertz in 1080p with HDR10 versus something with a higher resolution.
Yeah.
And I
That's pretty
ended
typical
up,
right now.
correct. And after doing my research and actually buying 2 monitors and sending one back, the clear winner for me was the HDR still in 1080p.
Yeah,
for
the
my
color
game.
makes such a world of difference, man.
And that was what the biggest thing, because I went and sat it right next to a Samsung 4K monitor, and yes, I'm like, yeah, it is a much better pixel density picture, but the pleasure I got out of the HDR, the like true HDR in HDR10, which is another problem because some monitors
You're right. No, you're right. It gets so complicated.
Some monitors and televisions, they're like, oh, HDR ready or HDR like, but as far as I can tell, the only one standard that's like, no, this does what it truly says is HDR10. And so to me, that actually was the biggest leap forward that I could do, was using HDR, and it is gorgeous.
So you're saying that HDR is more important than an extra like 4 million pixels?
Well, like 1080p to 4K, technically, it's like a 75% or 1080p is 1/4 of the pixels of 4K.
Right. Yep.
And 4K I think is actually great for those televisions because, as someone else says, either Ian or one of those guys, it's like 4K TVs right now are piss cheap.
Yeah, they're way
Like,
cheap.
They're
I mean,
super
they're all
cheap.
you can buy. And they have to make
Yeah.
a TV that you can buy for $400, or no one's ever going to buy TVs. So the 4K
Correct.
TVs now are $400.
Yeah. And so I don't think 8K is that big of a deal. When it becomes the standard for whatever reason, sure, I'll get an 8K TV, but I'm never going to go out and buy one just because it's 8K. Like now that I've seen what quantum HDR beauty can look like, and when I'm so close, when I'm only like 18 inches from my screen, or maybe a little bit more, that's fine. And with but to answer your question, 8K is almost the same equivalent to film. It's just a slightly different aspect ratio. Like 8K is slightly wider. Full frame 35 millimeter is slightly taller.
Okay.
So it's
So it is
about
pretty close.
It is very close.
So does that mean that 8K is the end of the line?
No, only because I don't know how it compares to, say, 65 millimeter or 70 millimeter. Like if that messes with the game. But as far as anyone who is not the most insufferable cinephile, I think 8K. I believe,
And there are
is going
tons
to-
of them.
Correct. See, I mean, the thing is, once 8K finally becomes a standard, it will have exactly what we have with vinyl versus digital now. people say vinyl is the best and continue to listen on an LP because they either think or they're convinced that it's the best. And other people will be like, 8K is good and all, but have you seen Lawrence of Arabia in 70 millimeter? Oh man, like which it is gorgeous.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think the main crux is that even in the most advanced countries, like some of your Asian countries and some of your European infrastructures, the amount of 4K content is in a way not up to what everyone claimed it would be. We have much more hardware than we do the software to play on it, and right now the only unless you're buying a standalone device, the only ultra HD players you have in the current consoles is the Xbox One S and the X.
Yeah, and the X, yeah.
And so for those, so I do know a couple of cinephiles who bought one of those so that they could watch the Ultra HD Blu-rays. But most videos don't get an Ultra HD release yet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I also dug up that data. It's like, I think Disney, didn't it just put out like its first true 4K Blu-ray not long ago?
Yeah, it was in the last.
Because a lot of them, they're really 2K and they're upscaling them to 4K.
Correct, and because Blu-rays still look great, and if you have a proper player, it can look gorgeous. But most true Ultra HD content, like especially if you wanted something true 4K or true 8K, you're going to have that data physically nearby, like either on a hard drive or something like that, for you to be able to consume it. Because
it's also a lot of data, and you're going to need at least an SSD to be able to fetch that stuff in a timely manner.
Correct. I mean, think about it. If the cameras that are shooting this stuff have to have thousands of dollars of equipment just to be able to process the data fast enough.
Yep.
The televisions and stuff that will have to use it will need relatively beefies up to play it. So I think 8K, when it comes, it'll be fine, but I don't think anyone needs to run out and grab it. To me, the best investment is a very deep, high range, high quality monitor. And this LG HDR monitor that I got is gorgeous. And even my wife stopped, was like, "Whoa, did you get a new monitor?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "It looks way different." And I sat her down and
she could see it.
She sat there for 15 minutes watching HDR, basically B-roll off YouTube, because it looks so gorgeous. And she was like, "I have never seen something this pretty on a television screen."
Well, it's also pretty funny because, like I said, we got my mom a 4K TV for Christmas, and she's like, "Okay, so show me the 4K," and I was like, okay.
Yeah,
So I start looking through the
press
apps
the
on her
button.
TV, and I go to YouTube, and I find a 4K video, and then I go to play it, but, she has, like, DSL, so the thing just keeps buffering and stuttering, and it keeps dropping in resolution. Like, I think you're right. Like, to me, the hardware is so far ahead of the content at this point, and content delivery.
Mm-hmm. I think some IMAX theaters are running in 6K currently. So, that they like because back here in PA it's confusing because we have IMAX theaters, but we also have like the Whitaker Center or whatever OmniMaxes,
Right.
which are the
Yeah.
domes.
Yeah. I mean, they have that stuff kind of everywhere.
Yeah, those are a whole different beast. But I did get to down at the one at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I got to see Dark Knight there because that was the first movie filmed for the Dome IMAX, and it was amazing. But I had a crick in my neck because it was 2.5 hours of looking straight up. So, but to answer your question, I think 8K is kind of just chasing a number at the moment. That it'll be other advances in technology like depth of color, true blacks, other things like that that'll make people actually turn their head and go, "I kind of want that."
I feel like the inky black thing was kind of a plasma versus LCD thing already. Like, I feel like that battle's already been fought, but you're right. Like, colors, depth of color.
It's coming back to that with OLEDs that aren't backlit. And so you get back into
right.
the LCD versus plasma, or now it's LCD versus
LED.
OLED.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And LED
And
does have great blacks. Like, it's the
Oh.
closest to a plasma that I've seen.
Correct. But no, but I felt so bad because I had been running, or my dad had a 50-inch plasma for over 12 years, and it was still gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
Until
I sold my old Panasonic
until lightning struck
720p
our house.
HD TV, and I almost didn't want to get rid of it because before the person came to pick it up, I sold it for $100, by the way. That's all I could get for it. And before the person came to pick it up, I turned it on and started looking at it, and I was like, this TV looks just as good as my TV out in the living room. And it's like 12 years old. I was lucky, like I never got any burn in on it. But I'll say this, that frickin' TV was heavy. That it was a 50-inch 720p TV. It weighed 140 pounds.
Yeah,
I almost
ours
got a
was
hernia trying to take it down off the dresser in our bedroom so the person could take it away.
Yeah. And we would have kept using his, except lightning struck our house and killed two TVs, a printer, a modem, and a couple other things. So
that's rough, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was awful. But yeah. So that's my thing. The depth of color is more important than the number of pixels. But and also I went with the 1080p monitor because I do play a lot of games past 60.
You want the frame rate, yeah.
Correct. And
I have a 144 hertz PC monitor that I use to play PC games, but it's 1080p.
Yeah, that's what this is. And so when my computer has to process only 25% of what it would be trying to do for 4K, it makes a lot of difference with the headroom on my gaming PC. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in again, man. Thanks for your technical expertise. We'll see you next week.
All right, bye.
Later, brother. All right. Anyone else in support of 4K or 8K? Are the consoles going to convince you to upgrade to 8K? Because that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I am in a place where I never got a 4K TV, and I think it might just be smarter for me to just wait until 8K. Let's see what the next caller says. Hey, what's up? It's Mitch. What's going on, Mitch?
Ain't nothing much.
What are you using to play games?
Well, the thing in front of me is a 720 television that's in front of me right now. And then I do have a 4K television in my living room next to me that I use to play games on. And that one doesn't go full 4K. That's the only tricky part about it, because the tricky part of 4K is like it's been stage mental. Like it's not true 4K. Like you can get close, but it's not exact 4K. Because I think
you mean your specific TV or just TVs in general?
I think TVs in general. I think now now within the last couple of years, it's kind of stayed at where it is now. Now it's more about definition of color and HDR and those kinds of aspects. And I bought mine probably 4 or 5 years ago, so it's early 4K. So it kind of never hit what 4K really is now. But my friend has a OLED curved, like 40-something inch television. It is gorgeous in 4K. But I think
what does he consume with it?
Oh, he plays games, watches movies.
So he plays games mostly with it.
Yeah, I mean, he uses that thing to his maximum. He's like, he paid $1,200 for that thing, so he's gonna get his money's worth.
That's still not that much. Like that last 1080p TV that I bought right before 4K turned over, I spent $3,000 for that TV. I mean, it's been worth it. It still looks stunning, like all these years later, and it looks so good that it's kept me from getting a 4K TV, or let alone 8K. So a good 1080p TV, I think, still has value.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the thing that during the discussion, I was like, oh, I have this point. I really just want to push it. And you finally said it. And I was like, good.
Oh, I said it on my own. Sorry.
So I think the big one is the delivery. I think the delivery is a big one at the moment. Like, we're not at the capacity to stream constant 4K content. So why are you asking consumers to pay for an 8K television when there's not even, like you guys said, and not content for it? But the thing is, it's just we're not even there at the stage we're at right now. Again, like the televisions are getting a little ahead of everything else, because those cameras, to be able to shoot in 4K, heck, the NFL won't even moach up the money to do it because it's not hurting their bottom line.
Yeah,
So
I think
why?
what a lot of people don't realize is that the pipes are only so big. And unfortunately, when they built a lot of the infrastructure, they never anticipated that they would ever have to send this much data for television. And so
Oh
all
yeah.
the pipes, I think a satellite, I don't even know if satellites can even, if the pipes are even big enough for 8K video, without it being crazy compressed. And in that case, you might as well just use 4K. I think the only opportunity, at least in the US, really are kind of these content delivery services like Netflix and Amazon, where they have really good deals with their CDN. So they don't have to spend as much as a lot of other companies do to have those kinds of pipes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing also that's coming out of it for this is, in games in general, it's now starting to not be more of a discussion of, especially in console gaming, it's becoming more of a discussion of not just the visual quality, but the frame rate.
Yep.
And I think I never PC'd game at all. Like I don't have a good enough PC to game on, or else I would totally be doing that. So my first experience with experiencing the difference between like, do I want the visual or do I want the frame rate was really when I got my PlayStation Pro, and especially when I was playing God of War. I was playing with the settings on that constantly, going, okay, what do I like more, this beautiful image, or do I want it's still a really cool image, but I have a better frame rate? And I ended up choosing the frame rate. And so I'm curious, as things like the content servicers like YouTube, they are starting to get into frame rates as well when you're starting to get into those higher resolutions. So it's more of a state of, are we going to hang around 4K for quite some time and focus more on frame rate instead? Because it's kind of showing people are a lot more prefer frame rate sometimes than they do prefer the actual visual image of how many pixels is coming at you.
You actually bring up a really good point, and that is this the best way to make use of the power of these consoles? Is it? Because personally, I think I would prefer to have worlds in games that are far more detailed and have a lot more physics going on, have a lot more AI going on, and that type of stuff, than just taking the same games that we've been playing for the last 10 years and putting them in 4K. Particularly AI. AI is a huge drain on computation. And it's just honestly something they haven't been able to do very well because they have to dedicate resources to so many other parts of a game and game development. And so what would happen if you built a game that looks like this generation, but used all that extra headroom to make the AI and the physics and things like that kind of next gen? And unfortunately, I feel like we didn't get that this generation. Like, we never really saw a developer who was like, you know what? I'm going to create this really flat shaded game that may look really basic, but the interaction with the game is going to be completely next level. I'm curious if I'm like the only person who really wants that. What do you think?
No, I'm in agreement with you, and I think something that was happening during the era of the transition to the PlayStation 4, Xbox One generation, as I recalled, people were having these types of conversations, going, "Hey, I would take less fidelity on the image and have better AI," and that, I think that was a big push for them in some aspects of saying, "Oh, we're going to have more complicated AI," and that's like, yeah, it's a little bit. It makes you push forward a little bit more if you really need to, but it's not that quantum leap that we were looking for. And I think something that kind of not assured me, but made me feel the same feeling at this of our conversation was when Sony talked about for their next PlayStation, they wanted to focus on something like 3D audio. And probably one of the games
that kind of piqued my interest too. I was like, okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, because one of the games that probably this generation that I would put on my list of probably the most memorable, if not the most amazing experiences, probably not my best game of all time, but of this generation, it's definitely on my top 5 to top 10 list, would be a Senua's Sacrifice, Hellblade.
Yeah.
Because that audio is so good. Like, there's just nothing like it.
It's next level,
And
yeah.
It's next level. And so when they said 3D audio, I just kept thinking of, oh, wow, like the audio was so good in Senua's Sacrifice. I wonder what the audio, could they match that and put that in just a regular game and change the game to a whole new dimension. I rather see leaps in that aspect than I rather see them. I would like to see incremental leaps in fidelity, so it makes it so it's easier to, obviously you need it to sell the product because that's the thing that they're going to see. They're not going to experience the audio.
That's
on
what
your
I was
home
going to bring up
television.
actually after you finish your point, was that I get it that you kind of there have to be games that do just kind of, hey, this is a modern video game in 4K, because that's what the casual folks latch onto, and it convinces them to buy a console. So you can't just completely ignore the, hey, this game's pretty generic, but shit sure does look pretty. Like, you need those games. But I'm just disappointed that we just didn't get more from the other side, or any really from the other side. I mean, you brought up Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. Yeah, like the audio in that is next level stuff. But I read an interview with the guy who left Infinity Ward and then just came back for Modern Warfare. And one of the things he talked about was audio. And he's like, we didn't have a reverb engine for the first Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. He's like, now I have 4. So I think audio and some of that stuff is something that just gets improved so incrementally that we never notice it. But I bet if you went back and fired up your Xbox 360 and put in that original Modern Warfare disc and played it on that Xbox 360 and then played the new Modern Warfare, I think you'd realize the audio is like, whoa, like, holy crap. But you're right, like, Hellblade is kind of the standout as far as that's concerned, but I think overall games have improved in that way. I don't feel like games have improved in the other way that I'm talking about, though.
Yeah, and I think the other part with that for the television, I understand why they're going the 4K route. You know, 4K televisions are the standard now for televisions, and so you want to have a console that goes with your current television. And so maybe if the 4K TVs last a little longer, especially since you know, television shows, except for things like from streaming services, but just regular network television, which I have YouTube TV that I watch TV from besides my streaming services, and that doesn't even run in 4K. It barely runs in like 1080p decently well sometimes. So but
yeah, I mean, for 4K, or God, 8K, I can't even imagine 8K video streaming, but for 4K, you pretty much have to have a cable internet. And chances are you probably need like fiber internet. You probably need Fios for it to really work the way you would hope.
Yeah, and I think probably by the time this generation might be over, and if there is one more cycle, like something like Microsoft said that they at least will have 2 more cycles, not just this coming up one, but one more, 4K televisions might not have to make that leap to 8K, because like we've had in our conversation already, maybe frame rate is going to take over the conversation. Heck, we had more conversations about details in the television itself in 4K and those small incremental adjustments rather than making that boatload leap to 8K. So who knows if when you get that next generation of hardware, they can just say, oh, we're still going to stick with 4K, but now it's a smarter AI. We're going to use more of that power to create a new audio experience, and it could change the entire game landscape in that aspect. But it would. The one thing that would have to stop is not us jumping to 8K by the end of this next generation of console hardware.
One last question before you go. Have you ever regretted buying a 4K TV? Do you maybe prefer or wish that you had kind of waited to do the upgrade for 8K?
No, not the upgrade for 8K.
Okay.
I bought my 4K TV 4 or 5 years ago, and I regretted maybe not waiting a little bit later to get the actual standard of 4K.
Yeah,
and I
or maybe get it a little cheaper too.
Right, and then I also I almost did buy the same TV my friend had, which was like that $1,200 OLED, just because I saw it and it was gorgeous, and I got my tax return, and I was like, okay, I might spend it on
burning
that.
A hole in your pocket.
Sure, but I did not. I looked at it, I walked away, and then I was like, I'll come back tomorrow if I really want it. I guess I didn't want it that bad. So the games still look amazing on my television. So I guess it's no reason for me to, even if I'm not getting the true 4K sometimes in some of the games, I mean, it still looks good to me. And I watch so much stuff on my laptop anyways that like the TV is really meant for my gaming stuff, or if I'm really wanted to chill in my living room because I'm always on the go.
Gotcha. Well, Mitch, thanks for calling in, man. Great insight as always. Have yourself a great weekend and a great rest of your Saturday.
Thanks, you too.
Adios, amigo. All right. I wish we had more time to talk about this, in all honesty, because I know there's some of you. Oh, here we have. All right, we'll take one more call. We'll take one more call before we call it a show for today's episode. Let's see who we got. Hello, and welcome to today's high score. Who do we have on the phone?
It's me again, Shane.
Daniel.
So, I don't.
It's
time's
like
running out.
It's always a surprise. We like the way Skype works. Like we can't always see who's calling in, so I accept the call and I just sit there with bated breath, hoping that it's gonna be somebody good. And this time it was. So you have the honor of being our last caller on today's episode. What's up?
I've just been on the chat, so there's a lot of British people on the chat while you guys are talking, and
Okay.
we were just talking about the fact that you guys talk a lot about not having a lot of 4K content,
Yeah.
and a lot of games and a lot of no TV and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And in the UK, it's completely different.
Is it?
The Premier League has been in 4K for 3 years.
Wow. Is that the most watched television in Europe generally?
Generally,
Is
football,
it like
yeah.
NFL football in the
Soccer.
US where like
Yeah.
the
And
Premier
then-
League Championship is the most watched?
I would
Okay.
think so, yeah. And then the F1, Formula 1 is in 4K.
Wow. That's a
And I
sport that
think-
really gains something from 4K.
And I have to double check this, but I think this year, on Sky anyway, because Sky has the NFL in the UK, the UK games
Will
are
be in
being
4K?
4K in the UK, but I don't know in the
Don't
US.
tell me that,
Why? Because-
dude. That's a bunch of crap. Like, what
Because
the
they're
hell?
using the cameras in the UK. They're using the same cameras
What?
they used to because you know the new Tottenham Stadium where the games are going. They obviously have all the 4K cameras, so it'll be on Ultra HD 4K in the UK on Sky, but it won't be in the US on
Oh, I
NFL.
guarantee it won't be
Yeah,
4K here. It's
so,
not
but I just think
happening,
it's really
man.
funny
If the
that you
Super
say
Bowl
that,
isn't in
because-
4K, they're not showing Steelers versus Colts on Sunday at 1 o'clock in 4K. It's not
So it's
happening,
It's just
unfortunately.
funny because you guys all talk about, and I think it's mainly size of the country. I think because
It's easier there because you don't have to build out that infrastructure as big as America does. Yeah.
exactly. Like I've got, I live in like a quite small city in the UK, Lincoln, and we've got like so many I think 80 or 90 megabytes a second fiber,
Yeah.
and like, all that kind of stuff. And I've got I'll show you my TV, my 4K TV on the wall there,
Nice.
55 inch.
That'll
That's
get the
my
job
gaming.
done.
Yeah, my gaming. So obviously I've got Netflix, which has quite a lot of 4K content.
It does, yeah. I'm
And
impressed
all
with
that
what
kind
Netflix has done. Like it is kind of the pioneer of 4K content.
Yeah, but obviously in the UK, like a lot of the films as well, I think are now they've got a 4K channel, I think, as well. Basically, Sky have got something called Sky Q, and which is their up-res box, which is basically for 4K content. So yeah.
So
it's
yeah,
quite
basically,
substantial in the
basically
UK, but
you
it's
just
quite interesting
called
to hear the
me to
contrast.
like rub it in my face, didn't you? You're like,
Well,
let me
it was
talk to
mainly
Shane
just
about what
because
we have.
It was mainly just because it's so for me, and I think a lot of sifters from the UK and Europe. I think we find it a bit strange. Like
Yeah, you're living on a
how,
different
like,
planet
the US
from
is
us.
so
You
far
I mean,
behind.
you're like, what are these fools talking about, man? I watch everything in 4K. Like, we get to watch nothing in 4K here. Nothing.
Yeah, so I think that's why. And for me, like I probably jumped in about maybe 2 years ago for my 4K TV. And
Well,
I
look,
loved
I
every
think
minute
that
of it.
if that were the case in America, where we had 4K content, the saturation would be way bigger than it is. I would have absolutely, if I could watch football in 4K, sold, cha-ching, done. I will buy a new TV that minute. And honestly, that is getting to kind of the root of this whole topic. That is the one thing that will keep me from waiting for 8K. Because right now, that's my plan. I am not going to buy a big 4K TV. I'm going to wait it out, and I'm going to buy an 8K TV. And because it is so close to film, honestly, I don't see why I would ever have to buy another television. Like, as I start to get older and my eyesight gets bad, after I have an 8K TV, I'm done. I'm done.
They've done studies. They've done studies with the human eye. They don't really know if the human eye can actually tell the difference at 8K before anything less than that. Obviously, 4K. They say 4K, 8K. Certain people's eyes will be able to see a slight difference, but it gets to the point where your human eye can't track enough to actually recognize the difference. So I do think 8K will probably be the end, and it will be other things that implement the improvement.
Well, there was a wives' tale that was flying around for a long time that where people were saying the human eye can't see faster than 30 frames per second, which
that's not true.
Right, it's not true, but it was something that floated around for a long time.
What is true about the 30K and above is that the human eye some people can start be affected by it at a faster rate, so they can feel because their eye's not used to the speed. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Obviously,
my wife, like when I play
exposure,
Call of Duty on my TV, and it's 120 hertz, so it runs at a really high frame rate, she gets sick watching me play. She's like, I don't understand. How can you make decisions this quick? Oh, I'm like, I suck. You should watch these other people play, like, because it blows her mind. She's like, it's so fast. How do you know what's going on and where everybody is and where you are? I'm like, you just get used to it, and it just blows her mind. She's like, I'm sick. Like, I can't even look at the TV. So, different strokes for different folks. But thanks for calling in again, man. As always, a great call.
Like rain on your parade, but a lot of people in chat just going, "What's Shane talking about?"
Yeah,
so
I understand.
And just give you our perspective.
It's the same with broadband too. Honestly, I mean, there's a lot of countries that have had great internet for a long time. In the U.S., still
I noticed
sucks.
that when I was working in PA, in the middle of PA, I'd come from the UK where we had not fiber optic broadband at that point, but pretty quick broadband to a place where there was dial-up everywhere, and I was just completely like baffled. I felt like I'd gone back like 20 years.
Well, even still, I mean, I think the vast majority of my friends who live in central Pennsylvania have DSL because, to them, they use the internet they use broadband to surf the internet and like send emails and use Facebook, and for that stuff, it works fine. And for that, they're like, I don't really care about streaming on Netflix. Like,
I generally think in the US it'll probably be 5G or whatever comes after 5G that will be people will move to rather than actual wired connection.
I guarantee you that's the case because it's way easier to send stuff through the air than to lay pipe.
Yeah, because 5K is just launched in the UK. Not 5K, so 5G just launched in the UK in certain places. But yeah, no, I definitely think that'll be the thing, and everyone just end up using their phone or whatever, the 5G dongles or whatever it is, to use the internet instead, and stop putting things in the ground. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, sorry to rain on your parade. But
it's all good, man. Again, it's always good to get different perspectives from people. So thanks for calling, man.
All right, cheers.
Later.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Yep, you too, bro. All right, folks. That's it for another episode of Today's High Score. I love doing this show. I think we could literally sit here all freaking day and just talk. Like, I love doing it. I love talking to you guys. The discussions today were amazing. I wish we had more. I wish I could have got to more of these topics. Some of them are kind of evergreen, so maybe I'll bring them back for next week. We'll see. But man, thanks for your participation. We got a couple new callers this week. I hope eventually all you guys who are arguing it out in the chat will summon up the gusto to become a part of the show. I think you can see everyone who jumps in, it works out great. So hopefully more of you guys will get involved and we can get even more voices on the show. But I'm just really, really happy and appreciative that this show has turned out as good as it has the first 2 weeks after being gone for a year. So thanks to all you guys. Before we go, again, I'm Shane Satterfield. Follow me on Twitter at Dinfire. Follow Sifted at Sifted Games. Game Face coming up on Tuesday from this very spot. Matt will be here. We'll have a new TriCaster operator again for this week's episode. But look for that Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Thanks to everybody who subscribed via Twitch Prime. I see Cody Carter just did it in the chat. Thank you. I don't get to watch the chat as much as I would like for this show because obviously I'm like juggling here between the TriCaster and Skype and trying to stay involved in the conversation. But it's fun. I love doing this show. So thanks again for everybody who participated. Everybody have a safe and fun weekend. We'll see you next time.